The math teacher meant it as a joke when he pointed at the janitor standing in the doorway. But when that quiet man stepped forward and solved the equation better than anyone imagined possible, it didn't just hush the classroom. It transformed how an entire school understood brilliance. It was fourth period on an ordinary Thursday at Eisenberg High in Elkhart, Indiana. The kind of afternoon where kids count minutes instead of focusing on lessons. Mr. Braddock taught calculus with a razor tongue and zero patience, seasoned with sarcasm that cut deep. Students tolerated him rather than liked him. He simply existed in their world. The classroom felt stale. Mathematical equations covered every inch of the whiteboard. The air carried that familiar scent of chalk dust mixed with old sneakers. Phones stayed hidden beneath desks while some students pretended to listen. Others gazed longingly through windows. Then something occurred that would crack the atmosphere wide open. As Braddock scrawled another derivative across the board, a soft squeaking drifted in from the corridor. The janitor worked outside, methodically mopping with his characteristic slow, steady rhythm. Braddock stopped mid-sentence, glanced toward the door, and his mouth curved into a smirk. Without hesitation, he spun toward the class and gestured toward the hallway. Well, look who's here, Mr. Dorsey. Think you can tackle this one?" He tapped the board with his marker like a game show host issuing a challenge. Scattered laughter erupted. Not the roaring kind, but the uncomfortable type that makes you squirm because you're unsure if it's appropriate. Braddock's smirk deepened. "Come on, Lamar. You always seem like you're thinking about something." Lamar Dorsey, 52 years old, stood in that hallway gripping his mop. He wore his usual forest green uniform, clean but weathered, with L. Dorsey stitched across the chest pocket. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. He simply stared into that room. Then slowly he stepped inside. The mop found its place against the wall. Several students straightened in their seats. Most expected him to fire back with some witty comment and leave. Maybe crack a joke or simply walk away. But he didn't. Instead, Lamar approached the front of the classroom. "You mind?" he asked calmly, nodding toward the board. Braddock raised his eyebrows. "Be my guest." Phones quietly emerged from backpacks. One girl whispered, "Is he actually serious?" But nobody stopped Lamar. He picked up that marker, studied the equation, and paused, not from uncertainty, but like someone reading a map they'd traveled before. He squinted slightly, thinking deeply. Then he began to write. No theatrics, no dramatic flair, just purposeful strokes. One line flowing into the next. The room fell into an almost supernatural silence. The only sound were marker against whiteboard and a chair creaking as someone leaned closer. Mr. Braddock folded his arms, watching intently. His expression remained unchanged, but his jaw tightened noticeably. Lamar explained each step aloud, his voice low and patient. "See, this is a chain rule problem, but the secret is identifying the inner function first. Once you isolate that piece, everything becomes much cleaner." He moved like he'd done this countless times before, not just solving problems, but teaching them. His tone carried no arrogance or smugness. He explained things simply, clearly, like someone who'd spent more years teaching than mopping floors. When he finished, he capped the marker and stepped back. The board displayed precise, beautifully organized work. He turned to Braddock, then to the class. "That's one approach," he said. For a moment, absolutely no one moved. A junior in the back row whispered. He got it right. Mr. Braddock said nothing, not immediately. His mouth opened slightly, but no words emerged. The silence grew more deafening than any joke he could have cracked. Lamar nodded politely and walked back toward the door, retrieved his mop. No applause, no boasting, just that quiet confidence. Like he hadn't just turned their world upside down. But as Lamar reached for the door handle, nobody anticipated what would happen next. Nobody moved. For 10 full seconds, it felt like the entire class had been yanked from a dream and dropped into something startlingly real. The kind of moment that doesn't belong in a typical high school classroom. Lamar Dorsey, Mr. Dorsey, as they'd always addressed him in passing, was halfway out the door when someone broke the silence. Wait, he just did that in his head? It was Wes Hanley, a senior in the front row, who rarely spoke unless grades were at stake. He wasn't joking. His eyes were wide with disbelief. He looked at the board again, as if the answer might have changed while he blinked. Braddock finally found his voice. Flat, almost irritated. Well, he got the correct answer. But his tone lacked its usual sarcasm. Something else had crept in. Something closer to confusion. Or worse, discomfort. Lamar glanced back. "I spent considerable time with numbers long ago," he said, then shrugged slightly. "They never left me." A few students laughed, not at him this time, but because the tension was finally cracking. Lamar didn't wait for responses. He left, mop in hand, shoes squeaking softly down the hallway, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just solved a college-level problem in under 3 minutes without even touching a calculator. That's when the phones came out for real. Someone had filmed the entire thing. Carly Benson, Jr., third row, and she was already editing the clip before the bell rang. In hallways between periods, it became the only topic of conversation. "Did you see Mr. Dorsey?" Braddock's face. Man looked like someone had unplugged him. "Where did he learn that stuff?" "I thought he just cleaned floors." By lunch, the video had landed on TikTok, then Instagram. Nothing polished. Just a shaky angle of Lamar's hands moving across the board while a voice in the background whispered, "Yo, he's solving it." The caption read, "Janitor just schooled a calculus teacher." Some laughed, others stared in amazement, but the buzz kept building. In the teacher's lounge, conversations weren't much quieter. "You're telling me he solved a full derivative chain problem in his head?" asked Ms. Lynn, the physics teacher. She was mid-bite into her sandwich, but had stopped chewing. "He did," muttered Mr. Crane, the English teacher. "Didn't use notes. Didn't even hesitate. It was like muscle memory." Braddock sat at the corner table, pretending to grade papers. He remained silent. But Principal Everett spoke up. "He's been here 6 years." Nobody ever mentioned he had an academic background. People shook their heads. Nobody really knew much about Lamar. He arrived early, left late. Floors stayed spotless. Light bulbs never burned out for more than a day. The man worked in complete silence. But now, he wasn't just a man behind the mop. Back in the hallway, a group of students waited outside the janitor's closet, not to complain about spills or request cleaning supplies. They simply wanted to talk to him. One kid, barely 12 years old, clutching a geometry book, asked, "Do you tutor Mr. Dorsey?" Lamar blinked. "I haven't in a very long time." "You should," the kid said. "That was incredible." Lamar chuckled, but it didn't sound dismissive, just surprised. The next day, during third period, Braddock's entire demeanor had shifted. He didn't crack jokes. He didn't randomly call on students. He taught with his eyes fixed on the board, his voice more restrained than usual. Nobody said it directly, but everyone noticed. After class, was approach him. "Mr. Braddock, that thing with Mr. Dorsey yesterday. He used the same method you showed us last week. The chain rule, right?" Braddock nodded once. "Correct. Only he explained it better." Braddock didn't respond. But what truly shocked everyone wasn't just the solution. It was what Lamar revealed afterward. Lamar Dorsey had never planned on creating a scene. He'd never enjoyed being the center of attention, not since childhood. So when students started gathering by the maintenance closet just to chat, or when teachers gave him lingering looks in the hallways, he felt completely off balance. He kept his head down and maintained his usual routine, refilling paper towels, fixing a leaky faucet in the boys' locker room, wiping down cafeteria tables. But he could sense it, the change, a shift in how people saw him, like they were trying to fit him into a completely new picture they'd never known existed. It wasn't just curiosity. It was confusion, respect, maybe even regret. And it made him deeply uncomfortable. That afternoon, Principal Everett asked him to visit the front office. He walked in still wearing his gloves, uniform slightly damp from cleaning under the cafeteria sinks. He removed his cap as a sign of respect. Everett leaned forward in his chair, hands clasped. "Lamar, can I ask you something? Do you have a background in education or engineering?" Lamar hesitated. He looked down for a second, like dusting off an old part of himself he hadn't visited in years. I went to Purdue, he said quietly. Mechanical engineering. Full scholarship. The principal leaned back, eyebrows raised. You're serious? Lamar said, had plans. Things got complicated. And for the first time in a very long while, he told the story. He'd grown up in Gary, Indiana. Smart kid who always loved understanding how things worked. Motors, pulleys, anything he could disassemble and rebuild. His mother, Estelle, raised him and his two sisters alone. She worked overtime at a textile plant and still found time to read to them every night. She believed in education like it was the only escape route. Books first, always, she used to say. The world will try to shut the door, but if you bring your own key, they can't stop you. Lamar earned that key. Valedictorian. State Science Fair winner. Then came that scholarship to Purdue. Freshman year, he was already tutoring classmates. Professors noticed his name on attendance sheets and paid attention. But sophomore year, he received a call that changed everything. His mother had collapsed at work. Doctors said late-stage cancer. By the time Lamar reached the hospital, she could barely stay awake. I can handle this, she whispered. Don't come home. He didn't listen. He took a semester off. Then another. He picked up jobs, warehouse work, night shifts at grocery stores. Anything to pay bills. Classes faded into background. So did the dream. By the time his mother passed, everything was scattered. He had no home to return to, no money to finish his degree, and no guidance counselor calling to ask why he hadn't come back. I kept thinking I'd get back to school, Lamar told Everett. But one thing led to another. Life doesn't wait for you. The principal sat in complete silence. The story was heavy. Not dramatic, just real. The kind of life you never hear unless you ask. Back at home, Lamar kept his transcripts in a box under his bed, along with a Weather Purdue sweatshirt, an old calculator, and a photo of him and his mom on orientation day. He never touched it, but never threw it away either. Now all of it was being dragged into the light again. That evening, he sat on the back steps of his small apartment complex. The sky was dim, the kind of quiet where the only sound was the hum of distant traffic. He sipped tea from a metal thermos and stared ahead. He hadn't thought about calculus in years, not since that last tutoring gig before dropping out. And now, here it was again, like an old friend knocking on his door. But one decision would derail everything he had worked so hard for. Back in college, Lamar had made himself a promise. Take a short break, get his family stabilized, and finish strong. But life doesn't bend to plans, especially not the kind built on hope alone. After his mother passed, Lamar returned to Gary, trying to piece things together. His sisters were still in high school, barely surviving. Bills stacked up on the counter. The landlord wanted rent, and nobody from Purdue called to ask where he'd gone. He took whatever jobs he could find. Stockroom loader, janitor at a strip mall, overnight security at a shipping yard. Anything that paid enough to keep the lights on. School drifted further and further into the rearview mirror. At first, he'd call the university occasionally, asking about reapplying, transferring credits. They'd send forms. He'd fill them out, but he never mailed them. Something always got in the way. Then came the breaking point. Late November, a man named Frank Booker, who owned a flooring company in South Bend, had offered Lamar steady work. You're sharp, he said. Don't waste your time pushing brooms. I'll train you myself. Lamar had hope again, a real opportunity. But the day before he was supposed to start, his youngest sister Alana was caught in a fight at school. A stupid argument that escalated. She'd broken someone's nose. They threatened to expel her. Lamar had to be there. No one else would show up for her. So he missed his first day at the flooring job. Frank gave the spot to someone else. And that was it. A door that could have opened slammed shut. He stopped chasing dreams after that. Started chasing stability. Years blurred together. Town to town. Job to job. He never had a criminal record. Never got into trouble. Just survived. Quietly. By the time he arrived in Elkhart in his early 40s, he wasn't looking for a new beginning. just a steady paycheck. The school district offered benefits. Summers were quiet. He took the janitor position without hesitation. He liked it in his own way. Predictable. Clean work. Students left him alone. Teachers smiled politely. He didn't expect friendship or connection. He didn't need it. He kept his head down, cleaned up messes, and disappeared before the last bell rang. But numbers never left him. Sometimes when he passed a math class, he'd glance at the board, see a formula, and finish it in his head. It was like muscle memory, a part of him that stayed sharp even when everything else got buried under routine. He'd go home, make himself a quiet dinner, grilled fish, brown rice, maybe some carrots, and flip through an old engineering book he kept tucked behind the cereal boxes, just to see if he still had it. He always did. He just never had a reason to show it, until Mr. Braddock called him out that day. And now things were shifting, not just at school, but inside him. He thought about the kids who waited outside his supply closet with questions, thought about Wes Hanley stopping by that morning with a folded piece of paper, saying, "Mr. Dorsey, I tried solving that same problem. Can you check it for me?" And Lamar had. Gently, carefully, he explained where Wes had gone wrong without making him feel foolish. Wes smiled when he finally understood, not just out of pride, but out of connection. That kind of thing stayed with you. But not everyone was thrilled. Braddock, for one, had gone completely quiet. Too quiet. Students noticed. Teachers noticed. Something about being shown up in front of your class by a man you never thought twice about. It rattled him. He didn't lash out, but his tone got shorter, his patience thinner. And when someone mentioned Lamar in the lounge, he changed the subject. He wasn't used to being outshined, especially not by someone who'd been invisible to him until now. But life had one more twist waiting, and this one brought him right back to mathematics. The video didn't just make its way around Eisenberg High. It made its way out into the world. It started small. A local student page reposted it with the caption, "When your janitor turns out to be smarter than your teacher." Then it landed on a regional education forum. By the weekend, it had crossed state lines. People online couldn't believe it. They weren't mocking Lamar. They were in awe. "Man broke it down cleaner than my college professor. Someone get this man a classroom and a chalkboard, not a mop." Proof you never know someone's story. By Monday morning, Lamar had no idea any of this was happening. He didn't follow social media. He still had a flip phone. When he arrived at work, the first thing he did was fix a jammed paper towel dispenser in the girls' bathroom, just like he always did on Mondays. But something felt different. Teachers paused their conversations when he walked past. Students nodded, not out of obligation, but with a strange kind of respect. A few even smiled like they were seeing him for the first time. "Hey, Mr. Dorsey." One girl called as he passed the library. "You're kind of famous now." Lamar chuckled softly. Don't believe everything you read. But when he turned the corner, Wes Hanley was waiting there with two other students. One had a calculus book in his hands, open to a problem highlighted in pink. "Would you mind going through this with us?" Wes asked. Lamar looked around, confused. "You got a free period?" We made time. And just like that, in the middle of a hallway lined with lockers and science fair posters, Lamar sat down on the floor with three teenagers and walked them through a multivariable equation, step by step, line by line. Not talking at them, talking with them. It wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, but something meaningful was happening. Down the hall, someone filmed it. No one told Lamar. He wouldn't have liked that. Back in the office, Principal Everett was on the phone with someone from the local school board. "Yes, that's correct. Lamar Dorsey. Been with us 6 years. No, he's not faculty. He's a custodian." He paused, listening. "Well, I wouldn't call it unorthodox. I'd call it overlooked." Meanwhile, in the teacher's lounge, Braddock was reading an email forwarded by a parent, a link to the now viral video. No commentary, no subject line. Just a link and the phrase, "Thought you want to see this." He closed the laptop without watching it. That afternoon, Everett called Lamar back in, offered him a seat. Lamar stayed standing. "I've got a request from the board," the principal said. They want to know if you'd be interested in running an after-school tutoring program. Small group, voluntary. Just a trial run. Lamar didn't answer right away. You'd be paid, of course, Everett added. It's not about replacing your current role, just adding to it, sharing what you clearly still have. Lamar looked down at his hands. Calloused, clean, worn. I haven't taught in a long time, he said. You haven't stopped knowing, Everett replied. Lamar looked up. There was no pressure in the man's voice, just a simple invitation. I'll think about it. That night, he pulled the old cardboard box out from under his bed, the one with the Purdue sweatshirt, the transcripts, the orientation photo. He hadn't touched it in years. He laid everything out on the table. The paper had yellowed a little, the edges curled, but the words were still there. That was the thing about knowledge. It didn't fade. It waited. He didn't need to go viral. Didn't care about the views or the comments. But knowing he could still make a difference, that tugged at something deep inside. But while some were amazed, others weren't so thrilled by his rising attention. The more attention Lamar received, the more the school began to shift. It started with the kids. They were the first to change. The ones who used to pass him in the hall, without a second glance, now stopped to say good morning. A few even asked for help on homework between classes. By the end of the second week, a small circle of students had unofficially formed what they called Dorsey Sessions. They'd meet in the library after school, notebooks open, heads bent, listening as Lamar explained concepts with clarity no one expected, but everyone respected. Then came the teachers. Most were supportive. Ms. Lynn from physics was the first to swing by the library and watch him work with the students. "You got a gift," she said softly. "And I don't mean just with numbers." But not everyone was thrilled. Mr. Braddock hadn't said a word about Lamar since the day it all happened. In the teacher's lounge, he acted as if nothing had changed. But the bitterness was clear in his silences. He spoke in clipped sentences. He never looked Lamar in the eye. He never mentioned calculus. When a parent-teacher meeting brought up Lamar's growing influence with the students, Braddock said, "It's good they're interested in math. Let's just make sure we don't blur the line between instruction and inspiration." It sounded polite on the surface, but the tone behind it, everyone heard it. The principal didn't let it slide. He brought Braddock into his office one morning and laid out plainly. "I know it stings, Everett," he said, "but Lamar didn't embarrass you. He inspired them." Braddock shifted in his seat. "He's not qualified. He's more educated than we realized. And more importantly, he's reaching kids in a way none of us have." Braddock opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say. Not really. Meanwhile, Lamar kept his routine. He didn't ask for a title, didn't want special treatment. But when the principal offered him a modest stipend to keep the tutoring sessions going, he accepted, not for the money, but because it felt right. He started carrying a small binder inside, wire pages of problems, blank worksheets, notes he'd written by hand. During breaks, he'd sit in the back corner of the cafeteria and scribble down formulas from memory, occasionally nodding at a passing student who'd call out, "Hey, Mr. D." One afternoon, Carly, the student who filmed the original clip, stopped him by the vending machines. "Did you ever want to be a teacher?" she asked. Lamar took a second before answering. "I wanted to build things. Teach later, maybe, but life had different ideas." "Well," she said, hand him a fresh mechanical pencil, "I think you're doing both now." He smiled. "Thank you." But behind all this good, there was tension brewing. Some parents had started calling the school. Most were supportive, but one anonymous complaint hit the board. Is it appropriate for a janitor to tutor students in a school setting? Is he certified? Has he been background checked for instruction? Everett handled it swiftly. He's an employee of the district. He's done nothing wrong. And if concern was truly the motive, they have spoken with me directly. He never told Lamar about the complaint. Still, Lamar could feel something in the air. Not resentment, but resistance. Like some folks didn't know how to place him now that he didn't fit neatly into the background. Then one afternoon, Braddock did something no one expected. He walked into the library during one of Lamar's tutoring sessions. quietly watched from a distance as Lamar explained integrals to a group of 4 students. After about 10 minutes, he stepped forward. "You mind if I sit in?" Braddock asked. Lamar looked up. His expression didn't change. He nodded toward the chair. "Long as you don't mind learning something." The students laughed just enough to lighten the moment. Braddock smirked. For once, it wasn't mean. They sat together that day, said little, but it was a start. But Lamar wasn't interested in titles. He had something else in mind. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. For Lamar Dorsey, standing at the whiteboard in the library with students gathered around, it was never about redemption or revenge. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to be remembered. He was just showing up for them, the kids, the ones who reminded him of the boy he used to be. Every Tuesday and Thursday, right after the final bell, that corner of the library filled with chatter, questions, scribbled notes, and wide eyes as Lamar walked students through math problems they once feared. Not because he had all the answers, but because he made them believe they could find those answers themselves. That's what stuck. There was Isaiah, the freshman who nearly failed algebra last semester, now solving quadratic equations without looking panicked. And Tasha, who used to hate math, now leading study sessions on weekends for her cousins using Lamar's notes. He never stood at the front like a traditional teacher. He sat beside them, talked with them, asked them questions before answering theirs. Gradually, more teachers started dropping by, not to supervise, just to learn how he was doing it. Ms. Lynn asked if she could adopt some of his explanations for her class. Coach Rivera asked if Lamar would help set up a summer prep group for incoming freshmen. Even Braddock, hesitant, prideful Braddock, stopped by regularly. Not every day, but often enough. He'd quietly offer an extra problem or two, and eventually began offering words of encouragement to the kids. The edge in his voice had dulled. Something in him had softened. One day during a tutoring session, Braddock lingered after the students left. "You know," he said, looking at the board, "I used to think this job made me important. That teaching gave me power." Lamar didn't interrupt. "But you've reminded me what it's really about. Showing up, making it count." Lamar just nodded. We all lose our way sometimes. He didn't hold grudges. He didn't need to. Principal Everett called him in again a month later. There was a proposal on the table to formalize his sessions into an elective class next semester. Not for credit, but enrichment. A bridge between students and their own confidence. "We'll have to jump through some hoops," Everett warned. "But if you're willing..." Lamar shook his head gently. "I appreciate it," he said, "but I don't need the title. I'd rather keep it simple. Let the kids come because they want to, not because it's on a schedule." Everett nodded. "Then we'll support you however we can." Word spread beyond the school district. A local reporter stopped by to interview him. Lamar kept it short. No dramatic story. No self-promotion. "I'm just showing them what they already have inside," he said. Sometimes it takes a little time to see it. In the spring, Eisenberg High hosted its annual student showcase. There were science projects, art displays, choir performances. And in one corner of the gym, a booth titled Dorsey's Table, displayed student-written reflections on math, life, and confidence. Dozens of students had written about how Lamar helped them see more in themselves, not because he gave them answers, but because he listened and believed. By the end of the night, people weren't asking, "Is he the janitor?" anymore. They were saying, "That's Mr. Dorsey." He didn't wear a suit. He didn't give a speech. He stood by the table, smiled, and thanked the students who came by. Later that evening, back at his apartment, he pulled out the old Purdue sweatshirt from the box under his bed. He didn't put it on. He folded it neatly, placed it in a new storage bin, and added a folder filled with student thank you notes beside it. Legacy, he realized, isn't about titles. It's about what you leave behind in others. He didn't need to finish school to teach. He didn't need a degree to lead. He just needed to show up every day and care. And that's exactly what he planned to keep doing. Thanks for listening to Lamar's story. If it moved you, if it reminded you of someone you've overlooked, or someone who believed in you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. Because sometimes the biggest minds are hiding in the quietest places.